Welcome back to the Element School of Psychology, and if you're new here, first and foremost, hit that subscribe button. This segment is called Can I Get Paid?
YouTube has a lot of channels that show people how to get paid in many different ways. And what I'm doing on this segment is I'm trying as many of these ways possible, and I'm showing the results here live. This video was inspired by a young lady with a channel called Entrepreneur's Mindset. How much can you make in a 7-day period with Driveaway? Let's take a look.
So this is the first unit I picked up on Wednesday of last week. It's one of the cheaper units that I picked up from Fort Valley, Georgia, going all the way to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I picked up this unit from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it went up to Saratoga, New York. The last unit I picked up in Montgomery, Pennsylvania, and it's going to Denver, Colorado. The total amount for the week was with all three units, $4,952.99. Out of that, I got to keep $3,854.12 in 7 days.
This video caught my attention because I worked as a Driveaway driver for 6 months. So I know how people get drawn into this business by people who talk about large sums of money and how it seems like they make it effortlessly. But being quite knowledgeable about this industry, I think it's very important to talk about everything that being a Driveaway driver entails, starting with the importance of accurate accounting. So I found the paperwork from my very first trip as a Driveaway driver where I made $1,350 in 2 days. And I used that paperwork to show exactly what I was left with after I broke down the travel costs. This is some of the documentation from my very first trip. I'm going to use the information provided here to paint a picture of what it looks like when you keep a detailed account of all of your expenses, either before or after a trip. This is probably the most important step as a Driveaway driver. It shows the difference between the amount listed on the load board and what you actually take home. First thing I want to point out on this one is that this pickup is in Mooresville, North Carolina. I live in Atlanta. So this is one of those trips where I had to travel to pick it up. And that's also a 4-hour trip. So for this one, I drove. So we start with the dollar amount that I received for this trip, $1,350. Next, since the pickup is in Mooresville, North Carolina, we'll calculate the first expense, which is the price it'll take for me to get to Mooresville from Atlanta. And the best way to do this is on a website called Rome to Rio. Here, we type in Atlanta to Mooresville, and it gives us estimates of travel time, modes of travel, plus costs. And since I'm driving, the estimated price of gas that it would cost to get me from Atlanta to Mooresville is about $48 to $70. So let's go with the cheapest amount. We'll make it an even 50. So we deduct 50 from 1350, and that leaves us with 1300. So we make it to Mooresville and we pick up the unit. And on this ride, as it shows, I'm given $350 for fuel. And of course, that has to be deducted from the $1,300 that we've been left with. So that leaves us with $950. Next, you get to DeSoto, Texas, you drop off the unit, and now you need a ride to the nearest airport. And on this particular date, Lyft is showing that the cost of a trip from DeSoto, Texas to the nearest airport would be about $53. So let's make it an even 50. And then we make it to the airport. We need a flight back to North Carolina. So we have to look up plane tickets from Dallas-Fort Worth to the closest airport to Mooresville, North Carolina, which would be Charlotte. Set it for this date, and the cheapest one actually shows $201 for an overnight layover. So let's just go with that one. You're going to stay overnight. And we deduct $201, and that leaves us with, as we've rounded that 201 down to an even 200, it would leave us with $700. And we make it back to North Carolina. We need to get a ride from Charlotte to Mooresville, and as it shows here, the Lyft costs about $65. And we subtract that, and that would leave us with $635. And last but not least, we need to make our way back home to Atlanta from North Carolina, and it's Rome to Rio, estimated about $50. So we fill up with $50 in gas, make our way back home, and we deduct that $50 from the last amount, and that leaves us with $585. So a couple of side notes to take away from this video. First of all, travel prices always fluctuate. Ubers, plane tickets, train tickets, bus tickets, sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower. And if you tow your vehicle, you're going to be able to eliminate travel expenses altogether. But the point of this video is for you to be able to see the dramatic decrease in price when you factor in travel expenses. There's a big difference between $13.50 and $5.85. So you're really doing yourself a disservice if you're not accounting for your numbers correctly. If you plan on being a Driveaway driver, my advice to you is to use this system I laid out before you accept any loads. And this is only part one of the series. There's a lot more to be unpacked when you talk about being a Driveaway driver. Right now, I'm going to put a fork in this one, and I'll see you on the next video.